Welcome back, everyone. In this next section here, we are going to be talking about uh, continuing with types of tissue. In a previous video, we spoke about epithelium. Now we're going to talk about connective tissue. Let's see if I could change the color of the pen. I don't like the green. We'll make it red. So connective tissue, remember with epithelium, it was a bunch of cells closely packed together with very little extracellular matrix. With connective tissue, we have cells that are widely spaced apart, and they're separated by protein fibers and what we call ground substance or matrix or extracellular matrix, which is really important. Connective tissue is the most abundant and most variable type of tissue that's found in all parts of the body. And it's got a variety of functions. It's going to connect organs to each other. It even connects to epithelium to the rest of the body. It gives support and protection in terms of physical support and physical protection, even immune support and immune protection. And that's because blood is connective tissue, whether we talk about cells or white blood cells. White blood cells, especially the white blood cells, are part of the immune system. Okay, it's important for the storage of energy and heat production, primarily by these right here, adipose tissue or adipocytes, which are fat cells. That's really important. And connective tissue is responsible for the movement and transport of materials through the body, and it uses this medium called blood to do it. So some of the characteristics of connective tissue, connective tissue is highly vascular, meaning it's got pretty good blood supply, with the exception of cartilage, tendons, and ligaments. They do have blood supply, it's just very, very poor. Especially tendons and ligaments have a very, very poor blood supply. Cartilage really has none. Cartilage is considered avascular. Whenever something is avascular, it means without vascular. Tendons and ligaments, they have blood supply, it's just poor. It's not the best. So there's a lot of non-cellular, non-living material between the cells of connective tissue, and again, that's referred to as matrix or extracellular matrix, but they're non-cellular components. That's the key there. So when we look at connective tissue, we're going to see that there's a variety of subcategories that we're going to be talking about. We're going to start with connective tissue proper. Then we'll talk about supporting connective tissue. And then we'll get into fluid connective tissue. Now, fluid connective tissue, we're really just talking about blood. Now, under blood, we have red blood cells, and then we have white blood cells. When we talk about supporting connective tissue, we're talking about cartilage and bone. When we talk about bone, bone has a pretty solid matrix. That solid matrix, we're going to focus on compact bone. When we talk about compact bone, you're going to be hearing of a term called osteon. The osteon. And the osteon under a microscope is going to look like something like this that has many concentric rings going around it, almost like a tree was chopped down and we're looking at a bird's eye view. So once we see something that looks like a tree chopped down, we're talking about compact bone or the osteon under a microscope. Under supporting connective tissue cartilage, cartilage comes in three flavors: hyaline cartilage, elastic cartilage, and fibrocartilage. So we'll talk briefly about the three types of cartilage. Okay, so again, that falls under supporting connective tissue. And then we have connective tissue proper, where we have loose and dense connective tissue proper. And under loose, we're going to get into areolar, adipose, and reticular. And under dense, we'll talk about regular and irregular, and a little bit about elastic, mostly regular and irregular. So you can see we got a bunch of categories here. And this has also been a quiz question in the past, which has been like a drag and drop, right? So you'll have to know, all right, connective tissue is the main category. And then you have three main types of connective tissue, and then which one falls under each category, right? So this has been a drag and drop in the past. So we're going to look here at this one first. We're going to focus here on connective tissue proper. So here's connective tissue proper, and we have areolar, adipose, and reticular, which is what it says here, right? Loose, areolar, adipose, and reticular. Now the areolar, which is loose connective tissue, it really provides padding, and it's going to separate your skin from the deeper tissues, right? If you were to pinch the skin on your forearm, notice that when you pinch your forearm, the skin kind of pulls away and the muscle slips away underneath it. So the areolar is this padding that separates the skin from the deeper part. And there's a lot of elastic fibers and collagen fibers in there. These are elastic and collagen fibers. These are types of proteins. And these proteins can kind of add to the strength or to the flexibility. It can either add to the strength or to the flexibility of certain parts of the body. Adipose, well, these are fat cells. And oftentimes they look like a squamous cell, right? They can kind of look like this. But the difference is that the nucleus is off to the side of the cell. So the nucleus may be here, whereas in a squamous cell, the nucleus is pretty much in the center. So this is a squamous cell. This is an adipocyte, fat cell. Okay. Reticular is going to provide the framework of support for most of your organs. Now, dense connective tissue proper. So now we're looking at this side here, dense. We have dense regular and dense irregular. Now, dense regular is tendons and ligaments. And they're made up of collagen fibers that are closely packed together, and they run in these nice parallel forms, in a nice parallel direction. And these are going to be tendons, or these are going to be ligaments. They all kind of run in a nice linear fashion. Collagen is that nice, tough, strong protein. The dense irregular, this is when we have collagen fibers, once again, some may run this way, some may run in this direction, some may go in that direction, right? So it's in a multitude of directions, and we'll find them in the skin, but in the deeper part of the skin called the dermis. And because the skin fibers, these dense, irregular fibers, are in different directions, it allows for you to get massaged or soft tissue manipulation, not just in a linear fashion going from perhaps left to right, but it can go in diagonal, right? Massage can be in a variety of directions. And the skin doesn't tear and sever, right? Unless there's some autoimmune soft tissue, connective tissue disorder that's there. Elastic connective tissue we'll find in certain ligaments. Elastic gives it the elasticity, especially ligaments of the spinal column or the vertebral column. The vertebral column is quite flexible. It's made up of 24 individually stacked bones with discs in between them, and they're pretty stable. But remember, ligaments are the type of soft tissue that go from bone to bone. From one bone to another, that's going to be a ligament. Okay. Now let's look at, so we did category 1. Let's look at category 3, which is fluid connective tissue. That's what it looks like is next here. And under fluid connective tissue, there's blood and there's lymph. So blood, we have erythrocytes. erythrocytes. An erythrocyte is really just a red blood cell. And the purpose of red blood cells is they're going to carry blood gases. They're going to carry oxygen. They're going to carry carbon dioxide, and they're going to carry nitrogen, well, nitric oxide, NO. Okay, that's the purpose of red blood cells. The white blood cell, these are leukocytes. Leuko means white, erythro means red. So white blood cells, we have basophils, we have eosinophils, and we have neutrophils. You're going to talk about these blood cells in anatomy and physiology too when you get into the cardiovascular system. This is just laying down some framework. So the white blood cells are basophils, eosinophils, and neutrophils. These are what we call granular sites. Granular sites, because those cells have granules. And then we have agranular sites. You just put the letter A in front of that word. We'll call it agranular sites. And those are lymphocytes and monocytes. So lymphocytes, monocytes, basophils, eosinophils, and neutrophils, those are your white blood cells. They help us fight infection. And when you have blood work that's done, if we have neutrophils that are high, then it tells us that there's a bacterial infection. If the lymphocyte count is high, then it tells us there's a viral infection. If the eosinophils are high, it tells us there's an allergy or a parasite in the body, right? So that's what happens when we look at blood chemistry. We analyze what's high and what's low, and it can kind of tell us a little bit about the pathophysiology of what's happening within the body. Platelets are also found in blood. Platelets are important because platelets are involved in creating a clot. That's what allows the bleeding to stop. If you want to inhibit platelet function, that's when people take blood thinners, or they take Coumadin, or warfarin, or aspirin. They all block platelet function, which means it thins the blood. That's when people are taking these blood thinners, and you look, especially at people who are maybe 60 years or older, and you look at the back of their hands, they have these like black and blue marks on their back of their hands and their forearms. They don't even know how they got them. It's just they bump into things and they bleed very, very easily. Warfarin is an interesting story of warfarin. Warfarin, initially, before it was a drug for humans, warfarin was what they used for as rat poison. Warfarin was what they used to kill rats. They would put these pellets out, the rats would consume it, and they would die because they would bleed to death internally, internal bleeding. Well, they figured, hey, if we can dose it properly and give it to humans, it won't kill them. It will just thin the blood in a more controlled manner. If we dose it based on height, weight, etc., then it thins the blood without killing them. Right? That's what Coumadin is, and warfarin for humans. Okay, lymph. This is the interstitial fluid that's found between the cells of the human body, and it enters what we call lymphatic vessels. Again, you'll get into this in a lot more detail in anatomy and physiology too when you cover the cardiovascular system. Okay, now we're getting into supporting connective tissue, the yellow category. So we're going to talk about cartilage and bone. When we talk about cartilage, we'll hit hyaline, cartilage, elastic, and fibro. We get into bone, you're going to hear me talk about compact bone, okay? So cartilage is avascular. It means it has no blood supply. And the three types are hyaline, elastic, and fibrocartilage. The strongest of the three is fibrocartilage. It's really thick and strong. It primarily acts as a shock absorber. So where are we going to have shock absorbers in the human body? How about between the vertebrae? We call them intervertebral discs, or IVDs. The vertebral discs. You've heard of people having herniated discs or bulging discs. Well, those are fibrocartilage. Elastic cartilage is for more flexibility. We'll see them in the ear, like the helix of the ear. We'll find it in the nose. We'll find them in the lungs. We'll find it in the epiglottis of the throat, more elastic. And hyaline, which is the most common type of cartilage in the body, we're going to find this type of cartilage covering the ends of the bone's surface that helps to form a joint. And this is the one that's involved typically in degenerative joint disease, also known as osteoarthritis. It's the breakdown of hyaline cartilage. Okay. And this is where people take different types of collagen. They'll take collagen fibers, either type 1 or type 2, to help regenerate. If it's fibrocartilage, they'll take type 2 collagen fibers. And if it's hyaline cartilage, they'll want to substitute type 1 collagen to help regenerate the cartilage in those joints. So here was like a matching. Let's look at fibrocartilage first. It's composed mainly of type 1 collagen fibers, and it's a thick parallel bundle. Thick because it's so thick, it's the strongest one. And we'll find that where you have the intervertebral discs or even the pubic symphysis, which is where the pubic bones meet. The hyaline cartilage, this is composed of type 2 collagen fibers, and it doesn't form a thick bundle. They're a little bit thinner, which is why they break down easily and they're involved in degenerative joint disease. And elastic cartilage is really a network of branching elastic fibers, more flexible fibers. This has showed up in the past. These are actually cartilage cells, right? What looks like these raindrops in the center, these crystal raindrops. That's actually the cartilage itself. But they're asking what is the highlighted structure, which is all this aqua blue stuff. So whenever we're talking about the stuff between the cells, that's going to be matrix. So it's the matrix of hyaline cartilage, right? So we have a bunch of cells that are not closely packed together. There's lots of matrix. In this case, the only answer it could be is the matrix of hyaline cartilage. Now we're going to be talking about bone. And when we talk about compact bone, we're going to be talking about this osteon. And there's a few other words I want to go over with you. We have osteoblasts and osteoclasts, and these are going to oppose each other in terms of function, but they work in harmony. Osteoblast with a B is going to build bone, and osteoclast with a C, it's going to break bone down. So you have a type of cell called an osteoblast that's building up bone. It's an immature cell that builds bone by creating matrix, and then the osteoclast is going to break down the matrix. So it's kind of like this coupling effect between building up and breaking down, building up and breaking down. Red blood cells are made and then they're broken down. Skin cells are made and then they're broken down. Hair cells are made and then they're broken down, right? The body goes through this construction phase and then demolition phase every single day. So osteoblast is an immature cell that forms the bone matrix, and osteoclasts are going to dissolve parts of the matrix. Osteoblast, let's say this osteoblast cell is this. Let's just say this is an osteoblast. It's going to produce matrix. And the matrix that it produces is going to, think of the matrix as like cement. It's going to push out cement all around it. And then eventually it's going to get trapped. Let's say here's another one that another osteoblast that's going to push out cement, and then eventually the cement is going to harden and it's going to get trapped inside parts of the calcified cement. So now this osteoblast becomes a mature cell called an osteocyte. That's what this is now. Now that it's in this little space, it's now called an osteocyte. The osteoblast can't go anywhere, it's trapped. So this osteocyte is now trapped. And this cavity that it got trapped in is called a lacunae. It's called a lacuna or lacunae. Okay. So it starts off as an osteoblast, it pushes out matrix, that cement or matrix calcifies, and it gets trapped in itself. It gets trapped in a lacuna. Now it's called an osteocyte. Osteoclasts are going to break down some of the bone, and then you have more osteoblasts that make bone. Okay, so let's take a look at a bone. So here is a bone, and we're going to take a look at this section right here, which is this part right here, right? This is compact bone. It's solid bone, compact. In the middle of it, it's spongy bone. It looks very porous. But this section here, you see you have these osteons. The osteon, this is one osteon. This is another osteon. Here's another osteon. These osteons look like a tree that was cut down, and it has these concentric rings, right? These rings going around it are just concentric lamellae. Those are called concentric lamellae. These are called circumferential lamellae. These are the ones that are going around the full periphery this way. Those are called circumferential lamellae. Okay. The outer part of the bone is the periosteum, and the inner part of the bone is called the endosteum. So endosteum, N for inner side. Periosteum is the outer portion. It's the periosteum in which you're going to have tendons and ligaments that attach here. Okay, and look how vascular bone is. You've got arteries and veins in here, and even nerves. They go through the center of each osteon. That center is called the central canal or a haversian canal. And that's why when a bone breaks, it does bleed. It bleeds internally. It can create a hematoma, a tumor or pooling of blood. So if we were to look at, let's say, a model of bone, the outer part is here. That is the periosteum. It looks like that's number 3, the periosteum. And then we have number 13 at the bottom here. That's the endosteum. And number 2, this is all compact bone. So all of this from here to here, there's number 2, that's compact bone. Okay, different than number 1, which is spongy bone. That's here. That's the inside part. So where is our osteon? Number 6. Number 6 right here. There's our osteon, which is this section from here to here. This is just one osteon. Here's another osteon. Another. Each of these are osteons. Okay. They're made up of all those concentric rings. Now, in those concentric rings, you can see these little holes. Those are the lacunae. Each of those little holes right here that you see, these are little lacunae. The lacunae was where the osteoblast that was making matrix, it gets trapped, the osteoblast gets trapped, and now it's not called an osteoblast, it's an osteocyte, which helps to maintain bone. Okay? So here, now this looks like a tree with all the concentric rings, and it wants to know what this full hole, all of these entire things are called. Is it lacunae, a central canal, a lamellae? This whole thing is called an osteon. Okay, these hollowed out black cavities, those are the lacunae. okay? The central canal is this right here. That's the central canal. Canaliculi, it's a little bit tough to see, but off of the lacunae are going to be these little jellyfish-like or spider-like extensions that come off of them. Those are called canaliculies. Okay, those are called canaliculies. And lamellae, those are these concentric rings going all the way around it. Those are concentric lamellae. So here, what's the highlighted section in blue? That's going to be the lacunae. Again, this is the central canal. Here you can see a little bit better the canaliculies. That's these little finger-like branches, spider web-like legs coming off of all of those osteocytes. Okay? All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll get into muscle tissue.